Getting on the show, Don Strouble, Orlando Magic beat writer for the Roundtable Sports. Don, how we doing?
Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry about my tardiness here. That's my bad.
You are good because you actually saved the bell on us right here because we're just gonna talk about the Magic. We were just getting there. But
All
before
right.
that, we want to get what are your thoughts on the Eastern Conference? Because there's so much happening right now.
Yeah, so the East is in this weird spot. I think last season there was this, or last off season there was this idea that the East was wide open. You look at these uh devastating season-ending injuries to Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum. We didn't know that the Knicks were going to be such a powerhouse yet. The Cavs were kind of this talented team, but hitting a ceiling. The Heat were in this weird limbo of not quite having that star, especially after Jimmy Butler was traded, and it was all being put on Bam and Tyler. There was just a lot of different things. The Giannis drama, so many moving parts. AP can relate to this. Philly good, but you never know what was going to happen with Joel Embiid's health. Tyrese Maxey was a great player, but still young. Uh, that's not the case anymore. A lot of these teams are established now. A lot of these teams um, have an identity and they've loaded up, especially during this offseason. I mean, the 76ers really look to be making a playoff, not just a playoff push, but a championship push. I'm sure that, after upsetting Boston, getting swept in the way that they did by the Knicks stung. And I mean, they're not messing around anymore. I mean, the Jaylen Brown trade was serious. And so I think that the East it's a tough landscape. I mean, you see what Miami did going and getting Giannis. I mean, I know that the Raptors, we'll see what happens with it, but they're trying to reunite with Kawhi. But quite a bit of legal trouble going on with that currently. But overall, I think that for the first time in a while, this has the chance to be the superior conference. And maybe that's not fair to say because we've seen the Knicks, an Eastern Conference team, just win the finals. But, there's always been this idea that the West is tougher. That's, where all the hardest landscapes in terms of the postseason reside. But I don't think that's the case anymore, guys. I think it's going to be in the East now.
Now, before we get to the Magic, Don, where
Yeah.
does where does LeBron go? Where do you think he goes? This is I know we know where your heart is at, but
Yeah.
where do you think he goes?
It's hard to say. I mean, I know. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be Golden State. I think that was just a leverage move. That team's not even being listed in his top three anymore. Um, I'm sure for the sake of our sites, Miami and Philly would be awesome. And for work reasons, I hope it's Miami because I'll make that drive. I don't care. Like, you know, but it's so hard to say because he's making such a spectacle of it, and I'm a lot older than you guys, so during the first decision in 2010, I was in eighth grade, and I remember this big buildup, and then just for it to go the way it did was so weird, and I don't think for the people of Cleveland, and I'm trying to speak objectively here, I think that if he doesn't choose the Cavs, it might not sting the same way, but this like dragging it out and stuff, it just feels like, come on, man. Like, I mean, it's about time, so we'll see. I don't know. I mean, uh, I'm sure you guys are pulling for either Heat or 76ers. And it's weird that, within this sphere of us like writers and publishers that two of those three teams are up for consideration, serious consideration. So, I think it's going to be an interesting summer.
I'm sure I can speak for AP. We both have stories ready. We have it
Yeah,
ready.
yeah, you got, got,
We
got a
both have
pre-write,
it
man.
ready just in case it goes down.
Yep,
But
Yeah,
it's sitting in my drafts. Yep,
me too. Me,
absolutely.
me
yeah,
too.
Yep.
yeah.
Everything. I'm just missing some contract details from Shams, but we'll get to that when it happens. But Don, with the Magic, obviously this past season was a bit disappointing. The Magic had expectations. They were ranked like top three in the East. only to finish where they were. And they showed some fight against Detroit in the playoffs, but then everything went downhill when Wagner went down again. Just what was your thoughts on the Magic season overall? Whether you thought it was the player, the injuries, the lack of chemistry, the lack of a defensive identity, or even just no, not Jamal Mosley losing the locker room. Just what's your thoughts on the whole season?
Yeah, so before I started working with Shandell and you guys, I had been in the building here and there with another outlet during the 2024 season. And last year was really my first time being there all the time. And so I got to see firsthand this team at its highs and its lows. And I think that um Jamal Mosley had gotten them to a point uh that was good. He had built a good culture. He had built a defensive identity. But for whatever reason, injuries aside, I think the message had worn thin going into the year, because this was a team that still struggled offensively and its defense fell off a cliff. I mean, we were talking about a top three team in defensive rating over the last two seasons preceding this one, and then they fall out of the top 10. And so I think that a lot of that, yeah, injuries were catastrophic for this group again, but I think that there's more to it than that. I think that what Mosley had instilled, that was its ceiling, and he wasn't going to break the ceiling. And so it was time to move on. But I also, the injuries were a big thing, but I want to caution against being like Jeff Weltman, the president of basketball operations, who is like that is his number one excuse, just ad nauseum all the time talking about injuries, injuries, injuries. And I think that it was the right thing to move off of Mosley, because my hot take before the season even ended was that there's a chance they keep him. I mean, that's just how this franchise operates. They are paralyzed by, not being aggressive. And I really think that if they win that playoff series against the Pistons, that he's still in the building at least for one more year. But I think they made the right choice here. It was definitely an underwhelming season. You got everything you could ask for from Desmond Bain, all 82 regular season games, played all through the postseason, took over as a number one option when he needed to. But just in general, a lot of roster flaws, just an awful bench. I mean, with the exception of Anthony Black, and at times a couple other guys, just a really bad bench. And so I think this is a team that um, they're in a tough spot because they're trying not to get into the second apron, so they can't do too much. Um, but yeah, it's even with the Sean Sweeney and a couple of the marginal moves, I think they're still a ways off.
Yeah, I wanted to get to the marginal moves. The Magic re-signed Javon Carter and Jonathan Isaac on a cheaper deal, even
Hmm.
uh, and then the Magic went out for agency. They signed Nikola Vucevic, reunion there, but they let go of Mo Wagner in the process. We were just talking about his move to Brooklyn. Just does the lack of aggression does that does that maybe deteriorate all championship hopes that the Magic briefly had?
Well, I don't think that they were really realistic to begin with. I mean, even last season, I think that this was a team that could have gone deeper than it did, but they're still very young. There's still just too many core flaws. And it was going to take more significant moves this offseason that realistically they just couldn't afford to make, unless they were willing to part with key guys. And this is just not a front office that deals in seismic transactions. The Desmond Bain trade was the largest move made in the Jeff Weltman era, and he's been at his position since 2017, right? And so there's no more draft capital left. Like, you don't have money. And so you're kind of in this situation where like the Vucevic signing, that was a steal. Like, it, because he could have commanded a little bit more on the market. I don't know if he's quite a mid-level exception player anymore, but to sign for the minimum, Like that shows that he wanted to come back, and that was good on their end because now they have a legitimate backup big that can space the floor, can go and get you a double-double on any given night. And that's a bench upgrade. That was a key need for this group. Um, but to answer your question, man, like bringing back Jonathan Isaac isn't going to push you closer to a championship. That was a bizarre move. Like I don't understand what their affinity with this guy is, and he's and that's no offense to the person. I'm just speaking plainly here. Like he's not a productive player, and he's always injured. And then Javon Carter, you bring back a good locker room presence, but you bring back a 6 foot sub 200 pound guard who can't generate looks for his teammates. He can't facilitate. And so you hope his three-pointer drops. And if that's not dropping, you have an undersized guard who can't get into the paint and he's easy to push around. And so now what, And like maybe they're banking on another Anthony Black jump getting ready for his extension, but we know from the injury history with this team, you can't put it all on one guy. So that's where they're at. Again, this is not a team that's close. I mean, maybe they get into the second round under year one Sean Sweeney, but like I said when I first hopped on here with you guys, things just got a lot harder in the East.
AP, any final thoughts on the Magic?
I think Don's spot on across the board. Honestly, I see them as a play-in team. If, in all honesty, I think they battle it out of the play-in. Maybe, like you said, second round's probably the ceiling.
Yeah, that might be it. I mean, I've always been high on Paolo. I still am, but as you guys mentioned, it can't just all be on one guy. Let's get to obviously the team that just won the NBA championship, the New York Knicks. First time in 53 years that they've won a championship. None of us were even alive, just to put that into context. But they re-signed Jose Alvarado, Jordan Clarkson, Mohamed Diawara, Landry Shamet. They signed Andre Drummond to replace Mitchell Robinson. Yes, he's older, and the injury history might still be a concern. I mean, AP, you could talk about that. He's been in Philly for the last couple of years, but still productive on the boards. So just to start with you, AP. Does the East run through New York?
No, I don't think so. When is the last time we've seen a team win back-to-back championships? Was it the Heat?
Warriors.
Golden State go back-to-back. Was that 2017? 18?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that New York team does not resemble enough talent compared to that Golden State team, that Miami team in 12-13. I don't think they go back-to-back. I think Mitchell Robinson is a big loss, honestly. We were talking about him earlier in the show. Yes, he has his problems, sure, but he was dominant in the paint, really on both ends of the floor in my eyes. And they lose Ariel Hukporti as well, who you were talking about you're high on. So
yeah,
your backup center rotation really takes a hit. I've had firsthand watching Andre Drummond, and he is still a solid rebounder and really one of the better rebounders across the NBA in my eyes. But outside of that, he's not going to give you a ton. Yes, he's added a decent three-point shot to his offensive arsenal, and credit to him for adjusting his game to the modern era like that. But outside of those two things, he's not really going to offer you too much. And I think, yes, bringing back everyone, you're retaining Shamet, Clarkson, the other guys you mentioned is good. Don't get me wrong, but you can't become satisfied, especially with how Don was saying the Eastern Conference is not wide open anymore. The Pacers are coming back into the mix. The Celtics are still going to be a competitive team. The Heat and the Sixers are better than before. You can't become satisfied in this Eastern Conference. And I think the Knicks were largely satisfied with their roster, and I don't think they should have been.
Mm-hmm. And just to add some context, since 2019 with the Golden State and Raptors finals, we have not seen the reigning champion return to the NBA finals. But Don, when you are ready, what are your thoughts on the Knicks, and do they still hold such a stronghold in the East?
Yeah, I'm with AP on this one. We just haven't seen that there hasn't been any dynastic runs by any teams in almost a decade now, and this is certainly not those Warriors teams. And I've said this to other colleagues outside of the roundtable space. I don't trust that James Dolan is the kind of owner that aggressively pursues another championship. I think that, you know, everything that he was saying during the parade was just to, stroke the ego of the fans and, catch them in a moment where they were feeling good. But we're talking about, in my opinion, historically one of the worst, most meddling owners in the league. And he's finally backed off these last few years and let Leon Rose do his job in constructing this roster. And it worked out for them. And I don't want to say caught lightning in a bottle because this is a very talented team. I mean, Jalen Brunson's the real deal. When this team missed out on Donovan Mitchell a few years ago, they got the next best, even better guy. Like, this is a true alpha, but we also know that as a smaller guard, things can become troublesome for him. And we saw him almost go down with injuries in this past postseason run, seeing him limping off the court. And, luckily for him and the Knicks, he was able to stay in. But the point is, James Dolan clearly is not interested in a repeat. He doesn't want to be in the second apron. I mean, you lose Mitchell Robinson, who's incredibly valuable. Yeah, you bring back some guys like Jose Alvarado and, Jordan Clarkson, and that's good. But I mean, to AP's point, like Andre Drummond, this isn't the rebounding champion Andre Drummond of, 8 to 10 years ago or whatever. You're not getting Detroit Pistons Andre Drummond. And so, I think that because of Dolan's arrogance, especially now that he's got that ring, I just don't think that this is a team that repeat, let alone especially now with we talked about the strength of the Eastern Conference, gets back to that point. I think that it's going to be an absolute dogfight. I mean, Miami is clearly very serious again. Philly is very serious. Like, you've got all these teams, vying for these spots, and I don't know. This is a group that's one Jalen Brunson injury away from being a play-in team at best. I mean, he is their engine, and there's just not. I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. I think it was their year, and but there's not dynasty written anywhere in this team because if you look at the Warriors from top to bottom, that was just A+ organization all the way through. And when you have an owner like Dolan, it's just you have it like you inflated that arrogance when you got that ring. And now he's going to do whatever's best for his wallet. And if the Knicks start to falter, he's going to be like, well, look at this one. I just that's how I foresee this going. So that's my thoughts on it. They're not the threat that they were.
I wouldn't say they're the threat, but I will respect the fact that they are the reigning champs. You got to pass through them. So, especially when we talk, because all the teams that we cover are still contenders. They're still going to be competitive, regardless of how the rosters are shaped up. So, I'm not going to say they're a threat, but I think that they are still the team to go through because they just won the championship and they retain most of the core minus Mitchell Robinson. Our final team that we're going to talk about is a team that we could say is a bit in the hunt, but they still need that level A guy, the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, losing Trae Young a while ago was, they moved on. They re-signed CJ McCollum to a 1-year deal. Same with Jock Landale, and they brought in Devin Carter and Aaron Wiggins in separate trades. They haven't let anyone go yet. Jonathan Kuminga is still in the open market. We'll see what happens in that area. But in my opinion, this was a landing spot that I had Jaylen Brown going before going to Philadelphia. I thought it was a good fit. I thought he'd be the D guy. Do you guys even see Atlanta being competitive with the way the East is shaping up? And I'll start with you, Don.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, and those guys, I mean, I think that this is a really good young backcourt. I think that Quinn Snyder is a good coach. Now, to the degree in which, I feel like Atlanta and Orlando are kind of in this similar sphere of like what their ceiling is right now. I do think that Orlando has a little more star power, because if you could truly unlock Paolo and Franz, then you're getting two elite top 10 level kind of guys at their best. I don't know if Atlanta has that, but Atlanta has a really good system. And I think that bringing in a guy like Aaron Wiggins from OKC and, having these different parts constructing this roster, CJ McCollum, a great vet. This was the only team that pushed the Knicks around in the playoffs last year. Literally the only one. I mean, they just it was after, they finally got it together, they just cruised to what, 17 straight wins through the, rest of the way. I mean, they would have swept the rest of the way if it wasn't for that Spurs win in the Garden. And so I think the Hawks have a good thing going here, but what's going to happen with some of its other ascending young talent? Is Zach Richache going to get it together and become the player that he's looked like in spurts? Are they going to get certain things from role players that make a difference in the playoffs? Because I think I heard it on Richard Jefferson's podcast. He said, in the playoffs, especially in the championship, your bench needs to win you a game, your stars need to win you a game, and your coach needs to win you a game. And I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker could get this team a win in a postseason setting or in a high leverage game. Quinn Snyder's good enough. He's been there. What are the other guys going to do, though? And so I think Jaylen Brown really, really would have helped make things interesting. And because they didn't get him, they're not at the level of Philly. They're not at the level of Miami in their own division, so on and so forth. But I think they'll be interesting. I think they'll be solid.
AP?
Yeah, I mean, solid's a good way to put it in my eyes. With how loaded the East is, I do probably see them maybe battling for that 6th seed, but probably in the play-in tournament. I was going through my head when Don was talking, and I'm trying to think of another team that's going to have a guaranteed playoff spot that doesn't have a 1A player. And to me, Atlanta does not have a 1A player. Jalen Johnson is great. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is great, but they're not 1A guys. And I just don't think a team without a 1A player can have a guaranteed playoff spot and make serious noise in the postseason. I'm very big on needing an on-court star talent, and I just don't think they have that.
I agree with you guys. Jalen Johnson's great, but he's not to the level that they need him to be, at least not yet. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, great year, balled out, but that's more of like a secondary scoring option. Like AP, we talked about how teams are missing that. Detroit's missing that. I mean, that'd be a good get if they wanted to, but obviously it's not gonna happen. So yeah, no, the East, guys, we're in for a crazy run this upcoming season. The East is just insane. Don, you and I are in a crazy situation with the Southeast Division because,
Yeah,
like you mentioned, the Heat are up there. The Magic can still be competitive. Charlotte and Washington are definitely crazy. They're on the rise with the moves they made. Atlanta,
mm-hmm.
I think Atlanta, in my opinion, is the bottom of the Southeast Division, and it's not even the shot. It's just the fact that Washington, I think, is going to be really, really good. Charlotte as well. Magic still have stars, and the Heat got Giannis. That's all I got to say about the Heat. So I think the Southeast Division is going to be a bloodbath to a certain degree, minus the Hawks.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Any final takes for you guys on the East?
I find the Wizards thing interesting. I find that interesting that you think that they'll be better. And that's not a shot at you. I think it's a little hot take territory. They're this weird team where it's like they've got this young talent, but have been tanking for years, and now they go and get really expensive stars and Trae Young and AD, and it's like, does AD even stay on the roster? There's so many unknowns with them right now that they could either finish second in the division or at the bottom, but we'll see. We'll see if it pans out.
I don't see why they would trade AD. I think they're very high on what he could still deliver, especially next to Alex Sarr and with AJ DeBanza. I think they got a good thing rolling, and I got them in like the play-in, but also like kind of close to that 6th spot. It's hot territory, but that's what we work for. We work for hot takes. We work for some elite clips. And we're not trying to get clipped with the whole 1A thing. We know that happened before with Jalen Brunson. We're not trying to do that. It's just more so, hey, the Hawks don't have a 1A guy. They just don't have one. But
Yeah, it's true.
AP, any final thoughts on the East?
Nah, man, not really. I mean, anybody who's a fan of an Eastern Conference team is in for a treat next season. That's what I'll say.
That will be all of today's episode of the Heat Wave Podcast, a special edition with the Eastern Conference. Anthony Aguirre with Don Strouble and Anthony Pasciolla. Make sure to download the Roundtable app. It is free. Join our sites, and we provide everyday coverage, the best in the industry. Thank y'all very much, and we'll see you next time.